Was James Gunn's Superman a triumphant success, a miserable failure, or somewhere in between? Well, there's been a lot of discourse online about that very topic, and I've received a lot of emails asking me about the conflicting reports on this movie and its box office. So let me give you the definitive answer, the final verdict on Superman's success or lack thereof. Now, a discussion on whether or not the movie was good or bad is subjective. It comes down to your own personal opinion. However, things like box office numbers, home media and streaming metrics, and audience consensus are all fact-based and data-driven measurements that can determine whether or not Superman can be considered a victory for DC. So let's take a look at the actual, real, indisputable numbers and analyze the budget, the profit margin, the home viewing numbers, and general audience perception. Alright, so first let's calculate what Superman needed to make at the box office to break even. Break even meaning it made its money back. And there's a lot that goes into this calculation. Not only do you need to account for the total box office and production budget, but you have to include the marketing budget as well, which can sometimes be an even bigger number than the production budget. And you have to take into account the chunk of the box office that the movie theaters keep. So let's do some math. The production budget for Superman was $225 million. Now, as for the marketing budget, most reports I've seen claim that it had a $125 million marketing budget, but I have seen some other reports that it was $200 million. The film made, at the box office, about $616 million. So, Superman made more money than it cost to make and market the film, winner, winner, chicken dinner, right? Well, not so fast. For us to call it a financial success for the studio from a pure numbers perspective, we not only have to subtract their costs, but we also have to take into account the movie theater's share of the box office. Now, some like to claim that movie theaters keep roughly half of the box office, but in reality, the movie theater's split with the studio changes over the movie's run. Movie theaters keep a very small percentage of opening weekend box office, which is when movies, especially big blockbuster movies like Superman, make the bulk of their money. Opening weekend, studios keep around 90% of the box office, leaving theaters only 10%. But as the weeks go on, that number lowers and they start splitting the box office about 50-50. Now, the most common formula used to determine a movie's break-even point after the theaters take their cut is to do production budget times 2.5. For Superman, that would equal $562.2 million needed for Superman to break even, which means using that formula, Superman made a profit. But the formula that I prefer to use includes the marketing budget as well. So with this formula, we add the production budget plus the marketing budget within parentheses, and then we multiply that by 1.5, which would bring us to $585 million needed for Superman to break even, which means that with this formula as well, Superman not only broke even, but it made a profit. Now, to be fair, if we go with what I had mentioned earlier, that highest estimate for the film's marketing cost, which was $200 million, giving us a total of $425 million to make and market the movie, and then we multiply that by 1.5, we get $637.5 million, which would put Superman ever so slightly in the red. But again, that's if we even include the marketing cost in the equation, which I believe we should, and if we go with the highest estimate for the marketing cost, which most reports are saying it was 125, I was generous and included the 200 for an average of, I believe it was 163. So while I would argue that the data shows that Superman was profitable, I wouldn't dare claim that it was some box office juggernaut. Of course not. And here's why, really, this entire argument, this squabbling over, oh, a few $1 million in the red, oh, it's a few $1 million in the green, it's irrelevant. And a few $1 million is peanuts to Warner Brothers. It's a rounding error. So whether Superman was a few million in the green or a few million in the red is irrelevant and a distraction from the real answer to whether or not Superman was successful. Here's some things to keep in mind. Superman was the highest grossing superhero film of 2025. It made more than Thunderbolts and it made more than Fantastic Four.
So you forgot me?
It is also the highest grossing DC film since 2022's The Batman, and if you want to compare it solely against DCEU films, and it's the highest grossing since Aquaman in 2018. Superman made a lot more than Aquaman 2, Shazam 2, The Flash, Black Adam, and I hate to pick on the Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman 84, and Birds of Prey because they all came out during the pandemic and got day-and-day releases on HBO Max, but if we want to include those, Superman walloped all of those as well. And sure, you might be saying, well, duh, it's a Superman movie. The name alone should make it more money than those other movies, and that's true. But what we need to remember is just how bad a shape the DCEU was in. Now, the DCEU is now dead and it has been replaced by the DCU. But before the DCEU ended, a DCEU film had not even been able to crack 500 million since 2018. Most couldn't even crack 300 million, some not even 200 million. The DCEU was dead in the water and desperately in need of a reboot. We needed a movie that would get audiences excited about seeing DC movies again. Hell, to see comic book movies again. This has been a rough past few years for comic book films, and Superman had a hell of an uphill battle. And that's why I have been saying for years that Superman 2025 did not need to make a profit. It didn't even need to break even. This movie's primary goal needed to be re-establishing the brand and getting audiences excited to see DC movies again, because in the long run, that is what is going to make the studio profitable and a successful franchise. Superman 2025 making a profit at the box office needed to be priority number 2. The number 1 priority needed to be making a movie that the audience loved and was excited to see the next one, and that's what it did. You know, people forget, but Man of Steel, a movie that I love, it came out at a great time for comic book films. Its DC lead-in was the Nolan trilogy, and its genre lead-in was the Avengers. It was also just a better era for the box office as a whole, an era we haven't seen since before the pandemic and may never see again. So when I hear people say, oh, Superman didn't even make what Man of Steel made, well, it was close, but yeah, sure, Man of Steel did make about 50 million more than Superman 12 years ago. Good for it. But what did Man of Steel lead to? A Justice League movie that couldn't even crack 700 million. DC needed to build a universe from the bottom up that makes people come see the next one. And the next one, and the next one, and more people coming each time, not fewer and fewer. And that's what Superman did. Plus, cherry on top, it made a profit, if we're honest about the data. Superman has also broken record after record on home media, digital renting, and purchasing. It has also broken records on streaming with HBO Max, and the movie is beloved by audiences. Does that mean everyone loved it? Does that mean you have to love it? No, of course not. Does that invalidate your opinion of the film if you didn't like it? No, of course not. But the overwhelming majority liked the movie, and that's why Superman cannot be viewed as anything other than a major success, both perceptually and for the future of the franchise, but also just cold hard numbers. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and by the way, I am giving away a Blu-ray copy of Superman. I believe it also comes with, yeah, it comes with a digital code. All you have to do is leave a comment letting me know that you're interested, and I'll pick randomly which one of you guys I'm going to send this to. So if you do leave a comment and you want it, keep an eye out for my reply so that I can get your address to send it to if you are the lucky winner. Now, before we go, if you want to stick around, I did want to share a clip with you from the Ask Colton show where we talked about the current battle for Warner Brothers and DC Studios that's happening between Skydance Paramount, Netflix, Apple, all of these major people wanting to purchase Warner Brothers and what that could mean for James Gunn's DCU. Take a look. Skydance, the Ellisons, Paramount, whatever, they're at the bottom of the list for who I would want to see buy Warner Brothers. And now we have yet another reason as to why they are at the bottom of the list for who I want to see buy Warner Brothers. And that reason is David Ellison. He has somehow managed to lose arguably Paramount's most valuable asset, Taylor Sheridan, the mind behind Yellowstone, Landman, Wind River, Sicario, Mayor of Kingstown, Hell or High Water. I could go on. Sheridan is Paramount Plus. He has made this company a lot of money, and he was one of, if not the most valuable pieces of Paramount when Skydance bought them. The only other name that comes to mind for me that could even remotely compare to the loss, the size of the loss that Sheridan was and will be to Paramount is Tom Cruise. But honestly, I think losing Sheridan may be an even bigger hit to this company than losing Tom Cruise would be, strictly from a numbers perspective. Because, God, the amount of money this dude has made for Paramount is absolutely insane. So yeah, according to recent reports, it was Ellison who ran Sheridan away. He was putting pressure on Sheridan to create a show that leaned into, I'm not trying to get political here, but this is the report, that leaned into right-leaning politics and messaging, which is crazy because a lot of Sheridan's stuff, like Yellowstone and like Landman and all of these shows and stuff that he has done for Paramount, it's already like Republican coded or conservative coded. It appeals to middle America. It appeals to the left and the right. But there is a big audience for Taylor Sheridan shows who would consider themselves on the political right, and they love Sheridan's work. So if Ellison's goal was, we want a show that can appeal to this mass audience, Sheridan was already doing it. But here Ellison is asking Sheridan to dial that to 11, and Sheridan said no. And he decided to walk, and now he's a partner with Universal, and he signed like $1 billion deal. And it is insane to me that Ellison would let walk away such an asset because he wanted to push some type of agenda that it was kind of already being put. And I'm not saying that Yellowstone pushes an agenda or any of those shows. I'm just saying that, well, why was he wanting these shows to be so on the nose and promote this certain political thing? Well, why even tell Taylor Sheridan, who's a guy who really just does his own thing, and it's worked out really well for Paramount to just let the dude cook? Why come in there and step on his toes and say, oh, we'll do this. And then, fine, if you as the owner of the company want to offer ideas, that's fully within your right to do. It's fully within your right to push him and say, hey, you're going to do this. That's fully within your right as the owner. But why would you do it? Why would you do that? Let the guy cook. So anyway, this asinine move by Ellison, it has me scared for the first time that this dipshit might actually run off James Gunn the same way that he has run off Sheridan. I'm scared that Ellison's going to come strolling into DC Studios, playing my dick's bigger than yours, and try to change the direction of the studio and the films and the shows that Gunn has planned out. And if Ellison tries to make Gunn censor himself or puts pressures on Gunn to promote certain political agendas or whatever, incorporate like a right-wing messaging or something into his films, James Gunn's on the left. That's not gonna go well. There is a 0% chance that James Gunn sticks around for that. I could see him totally leaving if Ellison won't just let him do his thing. And again, I go back to James Gunn, like Sheridan, proven success. Let the man cook and make you a shit ton of money. Ellison couldn't seem to let that be with Sheridan, and I'm afraid that the same thing could happen with Gunn and with DC Studios. And if that happens, if Ellison manages to run off Gunn the same way he just ran off Sheridan, here's what would happen. If Gunn leaves, I think Peter Safran, the co-CEO, he would walk as well, which would be another huge loss for the company. Because one of the key reasons you buy Warner Brothers is Peter Safran. He is one of the best film producers working today. And if you lose him, and then you also lose a lot of your DCU cast who would either abandon their contracts or refuse to renew them, like in solidarity with James Gunn, who is notoriously, he has a tight-knit relationship with his cast. And just like his cast stood by him when Disney tried shit-canning him. So if Ellison runs off James Gunn after, buying Warner Brothers and DC Studios, If they run off James Gunn, we're faced with yet another decade of despair, I think, for DC. And as a fan of DC Comics, I hope to God that doesn't happen, because we are living in a renaissance right now for DC. DC, for the first time in 15 years, 20 years, it's at a point where it might actually be able to surpass Marvel in terms of like movies. And comics is a whole different discussion, but become the more like successful and beloved comic book movie franchise. And this Ellison dipshit might just blow the whole thing up. It's insane. All right. Kind of mad now. Let's move on to our next question. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general. Whatever you want to ask, send it into the email address askcoltonnow@gmail.com, link in the description below. And hey, maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show.